Thank you, Mr. Gord. Next up, Mr. Angus.
Thank you so much for these presentations. It's very helpful. Mr. Chan, we know that Mr. Zuckerberg and Ms. Sandberg are very important people. Are they busy today?
I am not aware of their schedule today, but I think that that's right, that they unfortunately had to send their regrets.
Okay. I guess my question is, I'm trying to get a sense of corporate governance with Facebook. You come from Canadian politics. You work for the Liberal Party. We're kind of meek and mild here in Canada. I don't ever remember a summons being issued against the head of a corporation. And I don't ever know of anybody who's decided to ignore a summons. So surely to God they have something really pressing to keep them busy. When Mr. Zuckerberg recently said, as my colleague pointed out, his willingness, his desire to talk with legislators was that a joke?
Kevin,
sorry, Mr. Chan. I'm interested in Mr. Chan because he represents us in Canada.
Well, sir, I have to say that we do desire very much to collaborate with the Parliament of Canada and the Government of Canada. The election that's before us is going to be an important one for us to get right at Facebook. We want to ensure a free and fair election. That's why we have done all the things that we have done. We are complying with C-76. To my knowledge, we may be the only company represented on this panel that is moving forward with an architectured system to do this. We have moved quickly on hate figures and hate organizations in Canada. And we have signed on to the Canada Declaration on Electoral Integrity.
Yes, thank you for I'm sorry, I only have a few minutes, and I appreciate that work. And, you know, I'm a big fan of Facebook.
Thank you, sir.
I've spoken greatly about the powerful tools it has in the Indigenous communities I represent. My concern is this idea of opt-in, opt-out that Facebook has when it comes to national law. First of all, ignoring summons by Parliament because Mr. Zuckerberg may be busy, maybe his day off, I don't know. But you were recently found guilty by our regulator in the Cambridge Analytica breach. And our regulator, Mr. Therrien, said, quote, Canadians using Facebook are at high risk that their personal information will be used in ways that they may not be aware for purposes they did not agree to, which may be contrary to their interests and expectations. And this could result in real harms, including political surveillance. And what was striking was that Facebook didn't concede that we have jurisdiction over our own citizens. So if you're saying you're willing to work with parliamentarians, I don't get this opt-in when it works for Facebook, opt-out when... Can you give me an example of any company saying they just don't recognize whether or not we have jurisdictions over our citizens?
Well, sir, my eyebrows also were raised when I saw those reports, and so I did read it carefully, and I did talk to legal counsel about it. My understanding is that reference was in reference to the fact that, to our knowledge, based on the available evidence around the world and based on documented evidence in terms of contracts and things like that, but also witnesses who have firsthand account, that there was no Canadian or indeed no non-U.S. user data that was ever transferred to Cambridge Analytica. Okay, and I believe, if I may, on that point...
I only have a short period of time. 622,000 Canadians had their data taken. And Facebook became aware of it in 2015, and Facebook said nothing until it was exposed internationally because of the Cambridge Analytica breach. That is a breach of Canadian law under PAPETA. You know that law. And yet, to tell Canadian legislators that we had to prove individual harm before Facebook would concede jurisdiction, that to me would be like an international auto company saying, yeah, there were mass deaths in Brazil, yeah, there were mass deaths in the United States, yeah, there were mass deaths all over Europe. But since nobody died in a car accident in Canada, we are not going to comply with Canadian law. How do you get to decide what laws you respect and what laws you figure don't apply to you? Why do you think that?
Mr. Angus, with all due respect, we actually do go over and above the law as Parliament.
No, you don't. You don't recognize that we have jurisdiction.
As the Parliament of Canada knows.
How can you say that to us with a straight face, Mr. Chan? How can you?
Because it is the truth, sir.
So we have to take you to court to get you to recognize that we have jurisdiction to protect our citizens after you sat on a breach that you knew about for 3 years and you did nothing to tell us because you didn't want to upend your business model.
With respect to election integrity, we are going over and
I'm
above the law.
talking about the privacy rights of Canadians and the breach of our law that you were found guilty of.
And we can
That's
talk
the
about that as
question.
well, sir, in the time remaining, if you will permit me. As I said, we did want to get to a resolution with the commissioner. He has decided to take us to court, which is, of course, the framework that's prescribed for him.
He's had to take you to court. He had to take
We
you
had
to court
hoped that
because you
we-
wouldn't
we had hoped
concede
to
that
arrive
we
at a
as
resolution.
legislators even have jurisdiction over our own citizens. That's
has-
not coming
he-
to a resolution. That's like, hey, Facebook, is it okay if we come and see, and if it's okay, we'll all work things out? That is not how law works. Maybe that's how it works for Mr. Zuckerberg, but that's not how it works internationally, which is why we are here.
We have
Because
nothing
we
but
have
the
international
utmost.
legislators
We have
who are
nothing but the utmost
frustrated
respect for
by the lack of respect for international law.
We have the utmost respect for the law in Canada and for legal authority around the world.